Okay, hey guys, welcome to my office. Courtney Sykes here. We're going to talk a lot about the sciences today. I've got a couple different slideshows we're actually going to go over, so we're going to have fun together. Let's dive right into it, okay? Go ahead and pull out your notes, okay? I'm going to probably end up typing in some notes here. Follow along with me. We're going to talk about matter, pH, and cosmetic chemistry. I'm going to see how far we can get here. And we're going to go through some slideshows. So you'll see I've got a couple different things pulled up and we'll dive right in. Okay, so properties of matter, this is something you do need to know for your state board exams. Matter is anything that occupies space and has weight. That will be a question on your state board exams. Make sure you know. Matter is anything that occupies space, such as a solid, liquid, or gas. Okay, now, when it comes to chemistry, chemistry is the scientific study of all of those things, of everything from a solid, liquid, or gaseous substance. So it's the scientific study of matter. The two types of chemistry you need to know about are organic chemistry and inorganic chemistry. Okay, make sure y'all jot those down in your notes. This will be important for those final exams. Okay, then we've already discussed this, but this is a really good picture. Chemists, no matter exists in three basic forms: a solid, liquid, or gas. And oftentimes when it comes to water, as you see here, if there is a solid form of water, it's going to have to do with the fact that it's frozen, right? So it might look like a piece of ice. Whereas in regular temperature, as we know it, water can be in a liquid form. And then gas, if water, H2O, is heated up, of course, we see it come off as steam or gas, that sort of thing. So we do need to understand properties of matter because we're going to be working with cosmetic chemistry, with all the raw materials that have to do with active ingredients and functional ingredients to make up products that we work with on the skin, nails, or hair, depending upon whether you're taking a cosmetology, aesthetics, or nail program with us. So just make sure you know these items, right? So matter can be changed from one form to another in two ways, from a physical to a chemical form. Very important to know. And then physical changes, we mentioned this a second ago, but your example would be water freezes and becomes ice. That would be a physical change. There's nothing about that that's going to be different from H2O, whether it's frozen or whether it's not frozen, right? It's still water, but now it's a solid instead of a liquid. Proof of this is that if the ice cubes are removed from the freezer and allowed to thaw, they become water. There's no change. So a physical change, and we'll put that here, okay? If physical change means no change of the cosmetic chemistry. All right. So whereas frozen water and hot water, we'll just say the gaseous portions of it, it is still H2O, right? There is nothing that changes about that. Then when it comes to a chemical change, this is really important. Your example would be hydrogen combines with oxygen to form a new substance, which is water. So if it's just hydrogen or if it's just oxygen, that's the simplest form of that element. And that is important to know, and I'm sure that's coming up with these slides. But remember, an element is the simplest form of any substance. So your examples would be hydrogen, oxygen, and of course, when you combine those, it creates a molecule. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But elements are important. But chemical changes here, hydrogen and oxygen have different properties, right? Hydrogen and oxygen also have very different material characteristics from those of water. But when you combine hydrogen together with two atoms of hydrogen, one of oxygen, you've got your water now. Now that's a chemical change. Chemical changes are important to notate. They are not necessarily going to be the same as they once were, okay? Then here's what you see as element. All matter consists of atoms which make up elements. Elements are the basic pure substances that simply cannot be broken down into simpler substances. We said that earlier, simplest form of any substance, and that term you'll see on a question when it comes to your state board Q&A. So it'll be multiple choice. We want to make sure things are easy to understand. Elements, the simplest form of any substance, cannot be broken down any further. We want to make sure you get that one right when it's on a test question. Then the periodic table of elements, when I'm teaching my advanced aesthetics students and we talk about cosmetic chemistry, but we talk about laser mediums and all that good stuff, we talk about the table of elements because yttrium, aluminum, erbium, neodymium, all of those are laser mediums that actually help photonic energy be created by utilizing these elements inside of something known as an optical resonator cavity. So believe it or not, I always tell y'all that science is fun when it comes to beauty. That is so important. So look at what it says here about the periodic table of elements. It is the charter map used to display groups of related elements. There are 118 known elements, and goodness gracious, this could change tomorrow. There's constantly things that are evolving and changing. Some things that I've seen in the past or in recent history is that it would say there were 90 known elements. Now there's 118. So this is really cool stuff. Very important to follow when it comes to beauty. We're all going to utilize this in some form or fashion. Okay. Then here's a fun fact. So the periodic table of elements, the form of matter, whether it's a solid, it gives you a chemical symbol versus the element. Carbon, C, oxygen, O, hydrogen, H, nitrogen, N, and sulfur, S. And it just happens to tell you whether it's a solid, liquid, or gas. Of course, either here it's a solid or a gas. Oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen are all gaseous forms of matter, whereas sulfur and carbon are solids. So that's kind of fun to take a look at it from that perspective. Okay, atoms, and this is important to put these together side by side for your state exams, okay? Atoms are the simplest complete unit of an element, okay? So atom is the simplest complete unit of an element. Okay, that's important. Let me spell this correctly. There we go. The simplest, come on, simplest, there we go. Simplest complete unit of any element. And, your example would be if it's H2O, right? You've got two atoms of hydrogen, one atom of oxygen in this example. So just please remember these. We will bullet point these here, make those a little more bold. I might underline them here so you have it. But elements and atoms, that'll be a separate question in your state board exam. I want to make sure you do understand those, okay? There are three main parts to any atom: a proton, a neutron, and an electron. So that is important to remember: protons, neutrons, and electrons. Okay. And then atoms are, you want to have stable atoms. The outer shell is not missing any electrons. That's how this slide reads. But what you want to have, healthy atoms have paired electrons, meaning they are not unstable. Okay. An unstable or an unhealthy atom would have an unpaired amount. So it's going to be usually maybe one. Example would be one atom or one electron on that atom. So this would be where free radical damage is coming into the picture and it's causing your skin cells to just panic and freak out. That is important to remember, important to know, because you want to make sure that things have paired electrons. Then you're going to have healthy hair, skin, and nails, right? Healthy hair, skin, and nails. So we want to make sure that that's the case. Then this just gives you a good picture of the outer shell missing an electron where free radical damage happens. We'll talk about oxidation and reduction. I might as well go ahead and talk about that now because I mentioned this to my students yesterday when I was teaching this class, but you've got something known as a redox reaction, okay? And this stands for oxidation reduction reaction. Make sure you understand that, because that will be a test question. Redox, you would think it's reduction oxidation, but it's not, because it needs to be swapped. It's always going to be oxidation reduction. And the reason is that something cannot be reduced unless it's oxidized first. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Okay, so oxidation is where is the introduction introduction of oxygen and the reduction of hydrogen. Okay. Reduction is the complete opposite. It's the introduction of hydrogen, the reduction of oxygen. And specifically the oxygen, let's be specific here, specifically the oxygen that causes free radical damage of cells. So this is not good, right? So oxidation is not good. We don't want that to happen. In fact, oxidation is how metal turns into rust. Okay, one example. It's also how our cells die and ultimately, cancer occurs, right? So oxidation is not a good thing. We don't want to see this happen to our cells. So here's a good example of that. I teach a lot about the skin, of course. And so your skin, let's say you are applying something like, this is your example, applying benzoyl peroxide to the skin. Benzoyl peroxide causes oxidative stress to the skin, unfortunately, but it does, on the flip side, help with grade 3 and 4 acne by introducing oxygen into the pores to kill bacteria. So that's how that works. However, it causes oxidative stress, so it's not good to use in long periods of time, long spurts of time. So what would happen if you're applying benzoyl peroxide to the skin is it causes oxidation by introducing oxygen into the pore to kill bacteria, but it's also introducing oxidative stress and free radical damage to cells. Okay, so that's not good. But, if you then apply vitamin C, specifically ascorbic acid, right? Or L-ascorbic acid is your best version of vitamin C. Apply vitamin C like a serum into the skin afterwards. This helps with a couple of things. So let's look at the ingredient vitamin C. Vitamin C, the benefits of it is it's going to be a collagen producer, which is super cool. It is also a super antioxidant. Antioxidant meaning anti-oxidation, right? So this is good. So meaning that vitamin C, when it's introduced into the skin, helps to create reduction. So it is thus it is a reducing agent. You'll have a question on your test about reducing agents. And I just want you to think of that one scenario. Benzoyl peroxide is the catalyst that's causing all these problems, right? It's causing oxidative stress to the skin, whereas you can then apply vitamin C to counteract the efficacy of that, and it will then be the reducing agent. And remember what a reducing agent does, causes reduction, which is the introduction of hydrogen and the reduction of oxygen. So ultimately, while we have all this free radical damage that can occur to our skin, to our hair, to our nails, to our bodies that ultimately produce those effects, of beautification or the lack thereof for hair, skin, and nails, we want to make sure that we are introducing a lot of antioxidants into our bodies. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that I like to make sure I get across to students is we want to introduce many antioxidants. So the goal for beauty practitioners, that would be you. The goal is going to be to assist your clients in achieving maximum results through almost lifestyle coaching, everybody, which involves the introduction of vitamins and minerals, antioxidants into the skin and into the body. That's going to ultimately help hair, skin, and nails, right? That is a goal for all beauty practitioners, is to really have those conversations with your clients and say, hey, there is a lot of things that we can help when it comes to our hair, skin, and nails. So here's what we need to do. You may decide that you want to start carrying supplements. You want to start promoting on your social media channels the benefits of vitamin C internally and as well as topically to the skin, right? That's going to do nothing more than just ultimately help with hair, skin, and nail health overall, as well as health of the entire body. So not a bad gig for sure. Okay, next up here is molecules. Let's look at what it says. Two or more atoms are joined together by a chemical compound. That is a molecule. You'll have that question on a test. Okay, so an elemental molecule is where atoms are the same. So if it's O2, it's two atoms of oxygen, meaning it's an elemental molecule. Then a compound, atoms are of different or atoms are of different elements. So H2O would be a compound molecule. Okay, two atoms of hydrogen, one of oxygen. So as a review for your notes, molecules, there are two types. Elemental molecule, okay, it's going to only have one element we're talking about. So O2 is your example. Okay, we're working with one element. Then a compound molecule is going to be something like H2O. It's going to be your example. It's going to be more than one element. In that example, H2O, two atoms of hydrogen, one of oxygen. Okay, so molecules, that's very simple. For your test, for your final exam, it'll just be simple questions on what is a molecule or what is an elemental molecule, what's a compound molecule. Okay, and then this goes on to tell you about molecules. Two or more different atoms combined together create a chemical compound or a chemical mixture, that's for sure. And then on this slide, we've already talked about this, your oxidation and reduction or redox reactions, right? So this is very, very important. And I've got the notes for you here. So this is probably a little bit more, explanatory than these slides, but oxidation loses an electron. Didn't mean to move that around. Loses an electron and oxygen is acquired, right? Or reduction gains an electron and oxygen is released. So that's another cool way of looking at it as well. Okay, then three major biochemical compound groups are in the body: proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. And we'll talk about proteins for just a minute. Let's talk about some proteins in the body and how this is actually a thing and why it's important. So you have got cells in the body. Very important for you to live a long and healthy life, right? So cells are made up of multiple things, all right? Ribosomes are one of those items. Ribosomes are a type of organelle in the cell that produces proteins. Look at Google Docs trying to tell me the answer. So produces proteins. Ribosomes produce proteins. They specifically produce protein structures to manufacture hormones, good hormones in the body. So this is a beautiful thing. Okay. All right. So ribosomes create these protein structures. Now in the skin, you have something known as a proteoglycan. Proteoglycan. Proteoglycan is a type of protein structure in the skin that then produces a glycosaminoglycan. Just follow me for a minute. Glycosaminoglycans are also protein structures, of course, because they come from proteoglycans. Amino acids, right? Amino is in the inner part of that word. Glycosaminoglycans are in the dermis of the skin. So this is very critical to hair, skin, and nails. So I'll explain this in just a minute. But glycosaminoglycans are in the dermis of the skin, and they produce something known as hyaluronic acid. Okay. So I was just filming something earlier for social media about various skin conditions where scales would be a thing. Scaly skin. And we talked about a skin condition known as ichthyosis. Ichthyosis is a very severe lack of hyaluronic acid in the skin. Very severe lack of that. Hyaluronic acid is naturally found in the dermis of your skin. It holds 1,000 times its own weight in water. It is a water binder and skin plumper, all good things. But we don't want to have a lack of hyaluronic acid or a lack of these proteins. And so you can kind of see where we're going with that when we talk about chemistry. We need proteins in the body. That is extremely important. And when you lack natural hyaluronic acid, when you lack natural amounts of hyaluronic acid, we'll put HA for short, a couple things can happen. So you might just end up having, of course, dry skin. You could have dry or brittle hair. You could have dry or brittle nails. And then some skin conditions you might be aware of would be things like seborrheic. Let's see if I can spell this correctly here. Seborrheic dermatitis. That is a scalp condition, right? In which there is dry, scaly skin on the scalp, but it's usually a lack of HA. Okay, it's usually a lack of hyaluronic acid. So that is one example of many things in which there we go. It's an example of many things where it's ultimately could be slightly a birth defect, but also paired with lifestyle choices. And so this is why we always want to be focusing back in on the health of the body so that people can work on some of those things at home so we can then assist them with the beautification processes. It's very difficult to then do these hydrating facials or do keratin treatments on the hair or really keep the nails in good working condition and good health if they're not getting this hyaluronic acid support, which ultimately is a function of the cells on a very microscopic level where ribosomes have to be healthy. And cells need three things to survive, specifically. Okay, food, which is nutrients from other proteins. So we'll talk about that in just a minute, but usually nutrients from plants. Okay, and proteins. But I'll tell you, this could be, it could be animal-based, but mostly plant-based proteins. Okay, you can obtain many different proteins from plants, but animal-based proteins are fine. I will say, as a caveat to that entire thing, depending upon your blood type, you're either able to absorb plant protein, or excuse me, you're either able to absorb animal-based proteins or not. Some people have a little bit harder time digesting animal-based proteins, and animal-based proteins are good, of course, for protein, but not everybody can process it in your body. So plant-based proteins are key. But back to those three things that your cells need to survive: food, oxygen, yes, and then water. I've got my glass of water right here since we're talking about it. But you need those three things to survive: food, which is nutrients from plants mostly; oxygen, so oxygen that we breathe. Oh man, make sure you have good breathing air in your household. You're not breathing in things from phthalates, from terrible chemicals in cleaning products, or chemicals in your in Febreze, your smell good stuff in your house, your candles, things like that. And then water, drinking lots of water, and of course, applying a lot of water-based topicals to your skin. Those are all very important things. Okay. Then it goes into biochemical components in the body and skin, those proteins. Again, we've got an amino acid bond, we've got our peptide bonds, and then how this pulls into an amino acid chain. So amino acids create little building blocks, oftentimes of peptides that then tighten the skin, as one example to kind of bring it back to beauty. But as we get older, or if free radical damage happens, a lot of those peptides bonds break. So we do love peptides in skincare, and we do love peptides in hair care. And ultimately, those peptides, whether it's oligopeptide 7, pentapeptide 5, tetrapeptide 17, I mean, there's so many different ones, they create those chain links of elastin fibers that tighten up the skin or tighten up those cellular structures to produce healthy cells. So all of this is important. Then we need good carbs in our bodies in order to survive as well. So definitely remember that one. It plays a key role in metabolism, contains a combination of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen arranged in a chain. So complex carbohydrates are a fabulous source of carbohydrates for energy, but not the terrible carbs that we think of in the United States, unfortunately, such as white bread or starchy foods. Okay. Those are some of the things that our bodies do not absorb well, and there's no nutritional benefit to it. Then lipids, of course, I love this picture of olive oil and avocados. Lipids are components that fill the intracellular spaces in the skin. They create something known as intercellular cement, which is so true, made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So, oh man, let's put that in our notes, shall we? So we need lipids, right? Lipids, and internally we can obtain lipids through an intake of avocados, right, as one example, and olive oil. Olive oil. So very, very, very good, high quality olive oil. That's the thing. But your goal, right, your goal as a beauty practitioner is, here we go, is to help our clients protect the lipid bilayer for sure. The lipid bilayer is very important to the skin, okay, because that is made up of several different proteins. It's made up of that fatty layer. So we want to make sure we protect the lipid barrier of the skin, or the lipid bilayer as it's also known, lipid barrier for short. Let me undo that one. We'll put lipid barrier for short. Okay, make sure you're taking in all these notes. Always good things to think about, because some of these things in textbooks and these points they want you to understand, my goal is to try to bring it all together so that it makes sense to you. But lipids are so key. So let's think about ways we can apply this to our skin, ways that we can intake it in our bodies, right? So another thing topically, we can apply squalane. Squalane comes from the fat, right? The fat of olives. That is a really awesome ingredient today. You can apply squalane to skin, hair, and nails, everybody, just so you know. So there's a lot of really cool ways you can get your lipid intake, whether, internally or of course, topically. Okay, this is your check what you know. Check what you know. So these are some fun little questions, and it tells you what page they're on from our Pivot Point textbook. But I wanted to see, there we go. Let's make sure we get over here as a review. Perfect. So properties of matter, just as a quick review. Matter is defined as anything that occupies space as a solid, liquid, or gas. We said that. A physical change refers to a change in the physical characteristics of a substance without creating a new substance. A chemical change refers to a change in a substance that creates a new substance with chemical characteristics different from the original substance. So we know matter. We went over physical change. We went over chemical change. Then we talked about elements. They cannot be broken down into simpler substances. We talked about atoms, the smallest complete unit of an element. We talked about molecules. Two or more atoms joined together by a chemical bond can be an elemental molecule or a compound molecule. Talked about that. Then you need so much, in your cells to survive. We got a little bit more, nitty gritty with all these details, but you need proteins in the body to help construct new life. We talked about ribosome components inside cells that create these proteins. We talked about carbs, which helps to store energy, creating metabolism structures for you to have energy in your body. And then lipids, they help to really create nice, healthy skin cells, nice, healthy hair and nails. And this is a big part of the intracellular cement between these spaces in our stratum corneum. But we want to gain those lipids internally by eating nice, good fats like avocados or olive oil. You could also apply squalane as one example, which helps to bind all those lipid supporting structures to our skin. So this is an amazing, amazing thing for sure. Okay, then the next one I want to go over is pH. Let's look at pH. Let's look at pH. Okay, so pH of products is very important. pH stands for potential hydrogen. pH is a numerical measurement that indicates the acidity or alkalinity of a water-based substance. Absolutely. Okay. Acids and alkalis change the balance of hydrogen and hydroxide ions in water. Okay, so acids and alkalis, let's put this in our notes. pH stands for potential hydrogen. Absolutely. So make sure to have that down. These will be on your questions on your exam. So pH, you have a pH scale from 0 to 14, right? pH scale. Your 0 to 7 is considered to be acidic. Acidic. 7 is neutral. And then 7 to 14 is considered to be alkaline or basic. Now, when it comes to the pH scale, I always say the most important thing to remember is skin has a natural pH of 4.8 to 5.5. You know, if you're doing a chemical peel, you're performing a chemical peel, you want to make sure your peels are between a 2.5 generally and a 4.5 for it to be considered a chemical peel, right? For it to be considered an acidic chemical peel. Yes. So we want to make sure we understand that. I mean, if a peel's pH is going to be a 7, that's not a chemical peel. So just remember, skin has a pH naturally of a little bit of a range between 4.8 to 5.5. If you're performing a chemical peel, you want to make sure it's lower than that. So that's very key. And we'll make sure we highlight that one right there. Perfect. Okay. Then this really goes into some specifics upon whether something's more acidic, neutral, or something's more alkaline, which I think is really, really cool. It talks about ionic charges. So going back to this one, an acid is a substance that increases the concentration of hydrogen ions. So look at there, a lot more hydrogen ions in the acidic little bowl here. And then an acid, when acids and alkalines are brought together, they neutralize each other. So you'll notice the OHs and the hydrogen ions together. And then alkaline, there's less hydrogen ions. You'll notice that over here to the right. And going over here to the pH scale, this is a really good picture of just some general things you might notice. You know, lemon juice is usually a 2.4. Orange juice has a pH of 3.5. Gastric acid in your stomach is a pH of 1.5 to 2. Pure water, pH of 7. Okay. And then, of course, way over here, bleach is more alkaline at 12.5. So just remember, we don't want some of these more alkaline or basic items on our skin. And look there where it says hand soap has a pH of 9 to 10. Going back to our notes, rule of thumb is pH of skincare and hair care products really should be between that 4, well, if you're doing something more out, if you're going to be more pH balanced, let's just say pH balanced would be more of the 4.8 to 7.0. You don't want anything to be above a 7. So that's the key. Then if it's going to be more of an acidic serum for your skincare, remember I said between a 2.5 to 4.5, and that's pretty normal. So pH balance, let's be more specific. Serums, creams, conditioners, shampoos, okay? And then cleansers, things of that nature. You want them to be more pH balanced, okay? I do love a good pH testing strip, specifically this one pictured here to the right. That is a great one when it comes to making sure that you can showcase things to clients. So pH test some of your products and see what it comes out to be. The only thing is you cannot pH test items. You cannot pH test an item that is anhydrous. You cannot pH test an item that is anhydrous, meaning without water. So cleansing oils and that sort of thing. Okay, this goes on to tell you, of course, 4.5 to 5.5 is what they mention here for the skin, but 4.8 to 5.5 is what some other textbooks will say too. And then your products that are pH balanced around the skin pH, of course, would be that same sort of route there. Okay, my notes right here are a little bit more specific, so follow along there. And then high pH products can strip the protective layer of the acid mantle for sure, and high pH products change the skin's pH to a highly alkaline level. So they strip the protective layer of the acid mantle. Let's put that in our notes here just to make sure we fully understand. So basic or alkaline products strip the acid mantle off the skin or the hair. Okay, we don't want that to be the case. So keep that in mind. And then our little notes down here, just to keep this easy, acids and alkalis are substances that change the balance of hydrogen and hydroxide ions in water. For sure, acids, remember, are a pH between 0 and 7. And then alkalis are going to be above a 7 all the way to a 14. Okay. Then we've got here the pH scale is a logarithmic scale that ranges from 0 to 14. Substances with a pH of less than 7 are acidic. We mentioned that. And anything more than a 7 is more alkaline. pH values can measure with a pH meter, universal solution, or paper. Estheticians or beauty practitioners need to be familiar with the pH of products in order to select and use the appropriate products when performing client services. So pull out those pH testing strips. Let's make sure we know what the pH is of these products, folks, okay? So we've gone over a couple of fun things. My cat is visiting me here. There we go. And I hope y'all had a lot of fun. So please request a copy of some of these awesome notes, and let's move forward in some amazing understanding of matter pH and ultimately some good cosmetic chemistry. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time.